go to Governor Evans and Chevington to discuss peace, and they weren't allowed to do that, to come up with peace. So the governor and Chevington turned the Cheyenne and Arapaho people over to Major Wynkoop, and they told him that he could, give them rations and take them down to where they need to go, and that was to Sand Creek. And Sand Creek has no water, no game, nothing. It's just barren country. Once they got to, they went through Bench Fort, and there was fort lines down the road a ways. And once they got there, Wynkoop was getting to be too friendly with the Cheyenne and Arapaho people. So they took him out of that position and put Major Anthony in. Major Anthony was one of Governor Evans' people. Seemed like all the officers that were in that 100-dayer department had a plan before, and it wasn't to go after the Indians. It was to remove them from this place, because all of them had a title. One was a timberman, one was a banker, one was real estate, and it goes on and on. They were railroad people, so they wanted that railroad to come through, but we were in the way. So when they attacked this, I'm gonna say it was a retirement camp, because there was very few warriors there. There were elderly chiefs, that knowledgeable people, women and children. So when they attacked that village, they took out half of our leadership, our chiefs. Our chiefs have a band of 44. That's how many chiefs we have in the Cheyenne organization, or the tribe. And they took out over half of our leadership in one day. And after that, Black Kettle survived, and he made it out. Left hand got hit, and he made it to a Sioux camp that was there, and they tried to help him, but he didn't make it. So there was a lot of things like that nobody hears about. And after they brought all the mutilated parts to parade through Denver, then after Captain Soule gave testimony, and Kramer, well, both of them were killed. They were assassinated on the streets. So Chevington was never punished for that. Prior to all this that happened was the doctrine of discovery. They thought we didn't know anything about religion, but we had our own way of religious, what you might call today, religious freedom, and we use it still today. And once that doctrine of discovery came, well, that doctrine of discovery said if they're not a Christian, kill them and take their belongings. Even though we knew how to pray, and we had a higher power that we talked to. Then came along Manifest Destiny. That's where we really got beat up pretty good, and today we're still feeling the effects. Sand Creek, the document, the Treaty of 1865, Article 6, that everybody should get reparations. Cheyenne and Arapaho people should get reparations. When they moved us to Oklahoma, got us out of Colorado, they moved us to western half of Oklahoma. And at the time we had about 8 million acres. So they said, let's make a deal with you guys. We'll give you guys each 160 acres apiece. So besides that, they gave us 160 acres apiece. Then they took the rest, which was about 5 to 7 million acres, and opened it up to, whoever wanted it. I guess the Sooners or the race, or they had a allotment. I don't know if they had an allotment drawing or anything like that, but they just ran for their property. So we've been, I'm gonna say, crapped on for a lot of years, but we're still here,
Yes, sir.
They tried to wipe out the buffalo. They're still here. We persevere. We're still Cheyenne and Arapaho people today.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Fred, you want to? Go ahead.
Talked a long time, brother.
Yeah.
Well, when, like he said, the 1851 treaty gave us this portion of this land, this plains area, the Front Range. We didn't understand ownership. And as you know, that the churches said if you don't do something with the land, then you don't have a right to own it. They didn't understand that the land took care of us. Everything we needed, the medicines, the food, all the things that we used was provided by this land. So we knew by Niwot, he understood English. So he understood the 1851 treaty said they're not supposed to stay here. They can pass through, but they're not supposed to stay here. So this is why he's been recorded as saying you can't stay here. But being Arapaho, they said they're going to starve to death if you don't help them. So he said, okay, you can wait till spring. So this was the attitude of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. They knew that they weren't supposed to stay here. So they never really were at, the Arapahos are never at war at all. And this was, but the thing about it is that they understood this and they talked to the people in Denver. They knew who Little Raven was. They knew who these chiefs were. They knew who Left Hand was. And then they began to create this story. They began to create, using the newspapers and the other ways of communications, that there was an uprising. This uprising never existed. But they had to use something for a way to remove us. So this was the story that they created here. And it was done very, very well. It was done so well that when the marker at Fort Chambers was created, it still said Uprising. After all these years, it still said Uprising. They believed it. We never came back to this area after 1861. So this story couldn't exist because we weren't here. We were over there, in the plains area, down below. So this is a thing that always disturbs me so much, is that this undertaking of telling this falsehood on the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes when all we wanted to do was to live in peace. These chiefs went out of their way. They went and they even brought hostages so they could help ransom, that were held for ransom. They used them to show that in their hearts that they were true to this peace faction. Left Hand. But I mean, left hand, black kettle, antelope, white antelope, all these were great warriors. They cut their teeth on the Pawnees, the Utes, the Osages. They were known to be warriors, but yet they came forward. They were even considered POWs where they were at. They were given rations to hold them there. So that's the part that really disturbs me, is the falsehood that was made believable here in the Boulder Valley. So I always think about that part of how they, and guess what? Somewhere along the line, did you ever all think about why did Major, what was his name, Wynkoop, and why did Silas Soule and Kramer, all of a sudden they figured out, wait a minute, these guys are humans. Before that, we were not considered humans. And what happened to them when they stood up for us? One was removed, the other was killed on the streets of Denver. We were humans, and they found that out.